The conference room was cold and tense. It wasn't just the air conditioning, it was the faces. 30 people sat around the long glass table, staring at a machine that looked more like a piece of art than a tool, wires, gears, and polished metal and all of it. Dead. The CEO, Mr. Kane, stood at the head of the table. Tall, sharp suit, polished watch. A man who never smiled unless he was making money. His jaw was tight. His company was famous for building technology other firms could only dream of. Now, their newest prototype, the one meant to secure a billion-dollar deal, wouldn't even start. He slapped the table once. Hard. The sound echoed through the silent room. 3 weeks, he barked. That's how long we've had this thing sitting here, and none of you geniuses can fix it. Heads dropped. Engineers shifted uncomfortably in their chairs. Now, no one wanted. To meet his eyes, this wasn't just a broken machine. It was a ticking time bomb for the whole company. One man finally cleared his throat. Sir, we've tried everything. We even had specialists flown in. Whatever's wrong, it's deeper than the core systems. It might need to be rebuilt from scratch. The CEO's eyes narrowed. Rebuilt from scratch meant months. Months meant investors pulling out. He could already imagine the headlines. Kane Industries fails to deliver on flagship project. That wasn't an option. He exhaled sharply, rubbing the bridge of his nose. Then, with a humorless laugh, he muttered, "Fine. Anyone who can fix this thing today gets my car." The room went still. For a second, no one moved. Then a ripple of laughter spread around the table. Not because they wanted the car, because everyone knew it was impossible. Mr. Kane's car wasn't just any car. It was a sleek, black luxury model worth more than most of their annual salaries. It was his pride, his status symbol. Wouldn't even wash it himself, let alone give it away. The bet was a joke, cruel one. One engineer chuckled nervously. Sir, if anyone could fix this, they'd deserve more than your car. Maybe your job. The CEO's glare shut him up immediately. The laughter died down, but the mood in the room had shifted. Not to hope, to pressure. Everyone knew the bet was just his way of saying, figure it out or lose your bonuses. And judging by his tone, that wasn't an empty threat. As the tension thickened, no one noticed the man in the corner, a quiet black janitor, dressed in simple navy overalls, pushing a cleaning cart. He moved quietly, almost invisible, sweeping the floor and wiping the edges of the massive glass windows. He didn't make a sound, didn't even look up when the CEO spoke. But his ears were open. He had been cleaning this floor for over a year. Now, every day, he heard engineers talk about codes, parts, and systems. Every day, he swept around million-dollar technology. Every day, no one said a word to him. Not unless they needed the trash emptied or a spill wiped up. But today he stopped for just a second. As Mr. Kane's words echoed, anyone who can fix this gets my car. The janitor's head tilted ever so slightly. He looked at the dead prototype, his eyes narrowing for just a moment. Then, quietly, he went back to sweeping, like he had heard nothing at all. The meeting dragged on. Ideas were thrown around. Arguments started. One engineer suggested gutting the system. Another argued the design itself was flawed. No one had a real solution. The CEO's frustration grew like a storm cloud. Pathetic, he muttered. 30 of the best-paid engineers in the city, and I might as well be paying you to play cards. He turned to leave, throwing his final words like a blade. You've got until the end of the day. If it's not working by then, we'll all regret it. The heavy door closed behind him with a sharp thud. For a moment, no one spoke. Then the whispers began. This is bad. We're all dead if this thing doesn't work. He's serious about the bonuses, isn't he? Someone laughed nervously, trying to lighten the mood. Hey, maybe the janitor can fix it. He looks like he's good with tools. A few chuckles, a couple of eye rolls. The janitor didn't look up. He just wrung out his mop, the corners of his lips twitching not into a smile, but into something else. He was thinking. The engineers filed out eventually, heading to their stations, muttering about code rewrites and hardware tests. The janitor stayed behind, alone with the silent machine. For a moment, he stood still, staring at it. His reflection stared back at him in the polished steel casing. Then, slowly, he walked over. His fingers brushed the edge of the machine, feeling the cool metal. He crouched, peering into a small vent near the base, his sharp eyes scanning the wires inside. His hand twitched, a muscle memory he hadn't used in years. From the hallway, a voice echoed. "You still here, old man? Place isn't going to clean itself." It was one of the younger staff, smirking as he passed by. The janitor didn't answer. He just glanced at the man briefly, then back at the prototype. He muttered under his breath, so softly it was almost inaudible. They built it wrong. No wonder it's dead. And for the first time all day, the silence in the room felt different. Not hopeless, not heavy, but like something was about to change. Because while everyone else had laughed at the CEO's bet, the janitor was actually considering it. The meeting ended, but the tension didn't leave the room. Engineers shuffled out with their laptops, whispering under their breath. Some were angry. Some were scared. Most were already planning long hours ahead, but the whispers weren't just about the broken prototype. They were about the bet. Mr. Kane's car, a black luxury beast parked outside, had become the new joke of the office. Can you imagine? That car for fixing this piece of junk? One engineer muttered, shaking his head. Yeah, like anyone can do it. Even the specialists failed. Maybe one of us should just pretend to fix it, collect the car and run. Laughter rippled through the group, light and nervous, as they passed the janitor. One of them snickered. Hey, maybe you should take a shot at it. You could use a car like that, right? Another chimed in. Yeah, trade your mop for a Maserati. Sounds fair. The janitor didn't look at them, didn't smile, didn't answer. He just kept mopping the corner of the polished floor, slow and steady. His silence made them laugh harder. They thought he was embarrassed. But really, he was. Just listening. The laughter followed the engineers down the hall, fading as they left. The janitor stopped for a moment, resting both hands on the mop handle. His eyes drifted to the prototype again. He didn't smile, but there was something. In his expression, a flicker of familiarity, like he wasn't seeing a machine for the first time. Like he knew exactly what he was looking at. Across the room, a pair of interns lingered, whispering while pretending to tidy up papers. That thing cost, what, 10 million to build? Or like 12? And it doesn't even turn on. All screwed if Kane pulls out the bonuses. Think anyone can actually fix it. A pause. Then, in a hushed laugh, maybe the janitor. Gosh, he looks like he's done this before. The janitor's hands tightened slightly on the mop handle. Didn't turn around. He didn't need to. Been hearing this kind of talk for years. He moved quietly to the machine, pretending to wipe down the glass panel on the table beside it. His eyes scanned the prototype, every gear and wire visible through its transparent casing. It wasn't just a machine to him. It was a puzzle, one he'd already started solving in his mind. Behind him, one of the interns whispered again, "You think Kane was serious about the car?" The other chuckled. Serious? Please, he wouldn't give up that car for anything. This whole thing's a scare tactic. Yeah, but can you imagine some random guy actually fixing it? Kane would have a heart attack. They both laughed as they left. The janitor crouched slowly, his knees bending with ease, despite his age. He peered into a small access panel near the bottom of the machine, his sharp eyes tracing the wiring. The smell of burnt metal lingered faintly, a sign of where the real issue was. Not that anyone else in the building had noticed. They were too busy looking at the surface, he muttered softly. Faulty relay. Overloaded drive. They'll never see it from up top. His voice was low, almost like he was talking to himself. But someone heard him. From behind, a sudden voice snapped, "What are you doing?" The janitor turned his head slightly. It was Marcus, one of the senior engineers, arms crossed and eyebrows raised. A small group had followed him back in, all smirking. "Checking for dust?" Marcus said mockingly. "Or are you trying to win yourself a luxury car? I didn't know janitors doubled as miracle workers." The others chuckled. The janitor stood slowly, his face calm, unreadable. "I'm just cleaning," he said simply, his voice low. Marcus smirked. "Sure you are. Right. Don't get any ideas. That machine's more complicated than anything you've touched in your life. Leave it to the professionals." The group started to walk away, still laughing under their breath. But the janitor's gaze lingered on the machine. He didn't care about their words. He didn't care about the car. What he did care about was that the so-called professionals were blind. And he wasn't. As he turned back to his cart, one thought crossed his mind. Not bitter, not angry, just steady. They all think it can't be fixed, but I've fixed worse. The room emptied again, leaving only the faint hum of the building's air system. The janitor's eyes flicked once more to the broken prototype. Then, with a slow, deliberate motion, he rolled his cleaning cart to the far corner and leaned his mop against it. He wasn't smiling. But something about his movements had changed. He was no longer just a janitor in that moment. He was a man. With a decision to make, the office floor buzzed with tension. Every cubicle hummed with nervous whispers. Every hallway echoed with the sound of hurried footsteps and hushed voices. The broken prototype, the $10 million machine that refused to work, had turned the entire building into a pressure cooker. Word about the CEO's bet had spread like wildfire. Some employees treated it like a joke. Others whispered about it like it was a death sentence. Everyone knew what it really meant: fix the machine, or the whole division would suffer. And while the laughter about the car continued, fear began to grow. It wasn't just about bonuses anymore. If the company failed to deliver the prototype to the client, people could lose their jobs. Kane wasn't a man who forgave failure. In the center of it all, the janitor moved quietly, unseen by most. He pushed his cart along the polished floor, emptying trash bins, wiping smudges off the glass walls, and sweeping dust into his pan. But every so often, his eyes would drift to the lab where the machine sat like a dead giant, silent and cold. Inside the lab, a group of engineers surrounded the prototype, staring at screens filled with lines of code. Their faces were pale, brows furrowed. Every test failed. Every system check came back red. Nothing they did made the machine hum to life. Through the glass, the janitor watched them, not with judgment, not even with curiosity, but with quiet focus. The same way someone might watch a puzzle slowly solving itself in their mind. Hours passed. By late afternoon, Mr. Kane returned. His polished shoes clicked sharply against the marble floor as he stormed through the halls. When he reached the lab, he stopped, his piercing gaze scanning the group of exhausted engineers. "Still dead?" he asked, his tone like ice. One of the lead engineers hesitated before answering. "Yes, sir. We've isolated a few minor issues, but the core problem," Kane raised a hand, silencing him. "I don't care about your excuses. I care about results." He glanced at the prototype, then at his gold watch. "You have until 5 o'clock. If this machine isn't running by then, no bonuses. No excuses. A desk to come back to on Monday." A wave of unease washed over the room. Someone muttered under their breath, "That's impossible." Kane heard it. His eyes narrowed. "You think this is impossible?" His voice rose slightly, sharp and commanding. "I built this company on solving the impossible. And if none of you can figure this out," he paused, his lips curving into a thin, cold smile, "then maybe someone else will." He turned toward the door, but stopped mid-step. His eyes landed on the janitor who was quietly cleaning near the entrance, as if he had been part of the furniture the entire time. "Even you, old man," Kane said suddenly, his tone mocking but loud enough for everyone to hear. "If you can fix this thing, the car is yours. The offer stands." The room erupted in quiet chuckles. The engineers, stressed and tired, couldn't resist the humor. Some shook their heads. Others smirked openly. The idea of the janitor fixing a machine their top minds couldn't handle, it was laughable. The janitor didn't flinch, didn't even look at Kane. He just wrung out his mop as if the words meant nothing. Kane tilted his head, smirk still in. "Place, what's wrong? Not interested? Or do you know your limits?" The janitor finally spoke, his voice low, calm, and even. I don't need until 5 o'clock. The laughter stopped. The air shifted. Every head turned toward him, shock. Written across their faces, Kane's smirk faltered for a brief second. Then he chuckled. Oh, and how long would you need? The janitor's dark eyes met his for the first time all day. 10 minutes, he said softly. Maybe less. The room went silent. No laughter. No whispers. Just stunned, disbelieving. Stairs, one of the engineers scoffed, breaking the silence. 10 minutes? This thing has been dead for weeks. What could you possibly do that we haven't already tried? The janitor didn't answer. He didn't argue. Simply set the mop aside and wiped his hands on a cloth from his cart. Then, with slow, deliberate steps, he walked toward the machine canes. Smirk returned, but it didn't reach his eyes. Fine, you get your 10 minutes. No help. No interference. You can't do it, you're out of here by the end of the day. The janitor stopped by the machine, his fingers lightly grazing its cold surface. His face remained calm, unreadable. He wasn't nervous, wasn't excited. He was focused. Kane pulled out his phone, opening the stopwatch app. Your time starts. Now. Ah! The janitor crouched, eyes scanning the access panel at the base. He reached into his cart, not for cleaning supplies, but for a small, worn toolkit hidden in the bottom drawer. The sight of it made a few engineers raise their brows. Wait, one whispered. Why does he even have that? The janitor didn't answer, didn't even acknowledge the murmurs around him. He just popped open the panel and began working. His hands moving with speed and precision. Wires were checked. Connections tightened. Small parts replaced with spares he had carried for years. Each movement was confident, calculated, like someone who had done this hundreds of times before. The murmurs grew louder. The laughter was gone now, replaced by hushed curiosity. Even Kane's smirk was beginning to fade as he watched the janitor's hands move like clockwork by the 5-minute mark. Something unexpected happened. The machine, silent for weeks, let out a faint hum. Soft light flickered to life on its display. Gasps rippled through the room. Kane leaned forward slightly, his brows furrowing. The engineers exchanged nervous glances, one whispered, almost afraid to believe it is. He actually doing it? The janitor said nothing, didn't even look up. His focus was absolute. As the minutes ticked down, the hum grew louder, steadier. The machine's systems began to wake, one by one, like a sleeping giant stirring dot at 8 minutes. He tightened the final connection and closed the panel. The machine let out a sharp beep. Its core lights glowed a steady blue. The screens flashed green. The prototype was alive. The janitor stood slowly, wiped his hands on his cloth, and stepped back. He looked at Kane, his face still calm. Done, he said simply. The stopwatch read 9 minutes, 37 seconds. The room was silent, completely silent. Every engineer stared, mouth slightly open, as the machine hummed smoothly, fully operational. Kane's smirk had vanished entirely, replaced by something else. A mix of shock and something darker. Because in that moment everyone realized something. The bet wasn't funny anymore. The janitor wasn't who they thought he was. The hum of the machine filled the room like a heartbeat. Soft, steady, alive. The same machine that had mocked engineers for weeks was now running as if it had never been broken. Everyone stood frozen. The group of engineers who had spent endless nights staring at failed code and smoking circuits looked like statues. Their eyes darted from the glowing machine to the quiet janitor standing beside it, to the CEO. Mr. Kane's jaw tightened. His phone, still showing the stopwatch at 9 minutes 37 seconds, felt heavier in his hand. This was supposed to be a joke, a way to humiliate his staff into working harder. It was never meant to actually be one. The janitor didn't speak. He didn't smile. He just picked up his small, worn toolkit, wiping his fingers clean with the same cloth he had used for years. It was as if fixing a multi-million-dollar prototype in under 10 minutes was just another task on his shift. The silence broke. Marcus, the senior engineer who had mocked him earlier, stepped forward, his voice sharp. What? You do? The janitor didn't look at him. Fixed it, he said simply. Marcus's brows knitted. That's not an answer. How we checked every system, every circuit. This thing was dead. The janitor finally glanced at him, his expression calm, almost indifferent. You were looking in the wrong place. He turned back to his cart, sliding the toolkit into the bottom drawer. The problem wasn't in the code. It was in the relay and drive. Both were misaligned from the start. Your scans wouldn't find it because your software doesn't check physical variances. The engineers exchanged stunned glances. His explanation. It was simple, but correct. Exactly correct. The kind of detail only someone with years of building experience would even think to check. Marcus's face reddened. You're a janitor? How would you even know that? The janitor didn't. Flinch. I know machines, he said. Then, with the same calm tone, and I know when people don't. The words weren't loud. But they cut deeper than a shout. Marcus opened his mouth to argue, but no words came out. Meanwhile, Kane was still silent, his mind racing. He had made a promise, a public one, the car. His most prized possession, worth more than some of these employees' homes. The bet had been a power move, a way to show dominance, and now he was trapped by his own words. The janitor finally turned to face him. Your car? He said plainly, as if stating a fact rather than making a demand. You said anyone who fixed it could have it? The room tensed. All eyes flicked to Kane. For the first time all day, the CEO didn't look untouchable. Lips parted slightly, but no sound came out. Was he really going to hand over the keys to his luxury car? To the janitor? One of the interns whispered, barely audible, Is he actually going to do it? The janitor didn't push, didn't demand. He simply picked up his mop again and leaned it against his shoulder. His calmness made it worse, made Kane look like the one under pressure. Kane's hand tightened around his phone. Then, slowly, he reached into his suit pocket and pulled out his car keys. The glint of polished metal caught the fluorescent light. He tossed them lightly in the air, catching them once, twice. His eyes stayed locked on the janitor. Take it, Kane said finally, his voice low but steady. A deal's a deal. Gasps rippled through the room. No one had expected him to follow through, not with that car. But before the janitor could reach for the keys, Marcus spoke again, louder this time. This is insane. We don't even know who this guy is. How do we know he didn't cause the problem just to fix it later? Murmurs spread. It was a stretch, but fear made people believe anything. Some nodded. Others looked unsure. The janitor's eyes turned to Marcus, steady and sharp. If I broke it, you would have noticed. You just don't want to admit someone you mocked solved. A problem you couldn't. The words hung heavy in the air. Even Kane didn't interrupt. Because deep down, everyone knew it was true. The janitor didn't take the keys. Not yet. Instead, he stepped closer to the machine, tapped the side panel once, and said, You should have someone recalibrate the internal sensors. If you don't, it'll fail again in 6 months. Then, without another word, he turned to leave. The entire room watched as he walked to his cart, gripped the handle, and began pushing it toward the door. The hum of the machine followed him, soft but powerful, a reminder of what had just happened. Kane called after him. Wait, the janitor stopped, turning his head slightly. Who are you? Kane asked. Voice wasn't mocking anymore. It wasn't commanding. It was curious. Maybe even cautious. The janitor met his gaze for a moment, then looked away. Just someone who knows how to fix things, he said quietly. And with that, he pushed his cart out of the room, leaving 30 stunned employees and one speechless CEO in silence. But the unease didn't fade. Because no one in that room believed he was just a janitor anymore. The news spread through the building like wildfire. By the time the janitor had finished his shift and walked to the lower floor, everyone on the upper levels was already talking. Whispers turned into chatter. Chatter turned into laughter. Not friendly laughter. Mocking, nervous laughter. The engineers in the lab couldn't stop talking about it. Some were embarrassed. Some were angry. But most were just defensive. No one wanted to admit they had been outdone by the man who cleaned their floors. Marcus, still red-faced from the incident, sat with a group of technicians near the vending machines. He slammed his soda can on the table. This is ridiculous. That guy walks in, fiddles with a few wires, and now Kane's acting like he's some genius? One of the technicians shrugged. He did fix it. Less than 10 minutes. None of us could. That's not the point. Marcus snapped. He embarrassed all of us. And now people are laughing about it. We can't let this stand. The group exchanged uneasy glances. They weren't sure what Marcus meant. But it was clear he wasn't just going to let it go. On another floor, 2 interns whispered as they carried folders. Did you hear Kane offered him the car? The car. No way he actually takes it. He's just a janitor. Yeah, but what if he's not? Did you see how fast he worked? Like he'd built that thing himself? The other intern glanced around nervously. Do you think he's like someone important? Maybe from another company? The first one scoffed. Please. He's just an old guy with a mop. Don't make it sound like some spy movie. They both laughed, but it wasn't convincing. The janitor wasn't a spy. But there was something about the way he'd handled that machine. Something none of them could shake. Down in the maintenance hall, the janitor cleaned in silence. His cart rattled slightly as he moved from one corridor to the next, mopping the tile floors under the hum of flickering fluorescent lights. Every now and then, another employee would pass by. Some smirked. Some gave him curious looks. A few whispered things they thought he couldn't hear. Guess we're all getting replaced by janitors now. Maybe Kane will make him head engineer next. Wonder how much he paid to learn that trick. He didn't react. Not a word. Not even a glance. He just kept moving, the mop gliding smoothly across the floor. But inside, he wasn't angry. Wasn't even annoyed. He was calm. Because he had heard all of it before years ago in another building with another group of people who thought they were smarter than everyone else. And back then, just like now, he'd proven them wrong. Later that afternoon, Kane called. An emergency meeting in the same conference room? The prototype sat in the corner, humming quietly, almost as if mocking everyone who had failed to revive it. The janitor was there too. Quietly cleaning the windows as people filed in, Marcus sat at the far end, his arms crossed tightly, his glare aimed directly at the janitor. Others whispered to each other, stealing glances at him. The air was heavy. Not with tension from Kane this time, but from the staff themselves. Kane entered, holding a folder. His face was unreadable. He glanced at the janitor briefly but didn't say anything. Instead, he addressed the engineers. You've all heard what happened, he said flatly. The machine is running. Our client meeting is back on. But, he paused, his gaze sweeping the room. There's something you should all remember. Results matter. Not titles, not paychecks. Results. The words stung. They weren't directed at anyone specifically, but everyone felt them. Marcus shifted uncomfortably. Others stared at the table. Then Kane did something no one expected. He turned toward the janitor. Stay after this meeting, he said. I need to speak with you. The room froze. Eyes widened. The whispers began immediately. What does Kane want with him? Is he actually giving him the car? Or is he hiring him? The janitor didn't answer, didn't nod. He just kept wiping the glass in slow, steady motions, as if none of it concerned him. As the meeting dragged on, Marcus couldn't take it anymore. When Kane left the room briefly to take a call, Marcus stood, his voice sharp and loud. This is insane, he spat. That man doesn't belong here. He's making us all look like fools. The room stayed quiet, but several pairs of eyes glanced his way. No one wanted to agree out loud. But a few of them clearly felt the same. Marcus pointed toward the janitor, who was now sweeping near the back wall. Hey you, you think you're some kind of hero now. You think you're better than us because you got lucky? The janitor didn't stop sweeping, didn't even look at Marcus. He just said calmly, I don't think I'm better than anyone. But I know when a machine is broken, and I know how to fix it. Marcus's fists clenched. The engineers at the table exchanged uneasy glances. The janitor's voice wasn't loud, but it had a weight to it. Like every word carried years of Something none of them understood. The laughter started again. This time not playful, but loud and uneasy. Marcus forced it, trying to pull others into it. Look at him, acting like some genius. Maybe Kane should give him the whole company. While he's at it, a few others joined in nervously, their laughter echoing in the room. But no one was really laughing at the janitor. They were laughing to cover their own discomfort. The janitor didn't react. He didn't flinch, didn't even pause his sweeping. But for the first time, his eyes shifted, not angry, not sad, but sharp. A flicker of something old, something controlled, passed through them. Then he said, quietly but clearly, "If you think this is about a car, you're not paying attention." The laughter died instantly. The room fell silent. Even Marcus froze, his face pale. Before anyone could respond, Kane re-entered, his call finished. Looked around, sensing the tension, but not commenting on it. Instead, he motioned toward the janitor. "You with me. Now." The janitor set his mop against the wall and followed Kane out, leaving a room full of uneasy employees behind. No one spoke for a long moment after the door closed, because now the question wasn't just who this janitor was. It was why Kane suddenly wanted to talk to him alone. The hallway outside the conference room was quiet. Too quiet. The usual buzz of employees and chatter seemed to fade as Mr. Kane walked with the janitor down the polished corridor. The sharp click of Kane's shoes echoed against the glass walls. The janitor's steps, slower and steady, made almost no sound at all. Neither man spoke as they entered Kane's private office. A massive room with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. The skyline stretched far beyond, glowing under the setting sun. In the center, a sleek black desk sat like a throne, covered in neat stacks of files. Kane motioned for the janitor to sit. The janitor didn't move. He stayed standing, his hands loosely at his sides, his expression unreadable. Kane leaned against his desk, crossing his arms. His eyes studied the man in front of him, calm, silent, like he wasn't intimidated by the towering office or the billionaire CEO staring him down. "You know," Kane said slowly, "I don't like surprises in my company." His voice was low, even, especially not surprises that make my highly paid engineers look useless. The janitor didn't respond. He didn't even blink. Kane tilted his head, his sharp gaze narrowing. "You fixed that prototype like it was nothing, something no one here could do. And now my entire staff can't stop whispering about you." He paused, his tone sharpening. "Who are you, really?" The janitor's eyes met his. For a moment, neither man moved. Then calmly he said, "I'm the janitor." "That's all you need to know." Kane smirked faintly. "Don't insult me. A janitor doesn't carry a precision toolkit like that. A janitor doesn't diagnose a multi-million-dollar system in minutes. And a janitor doesn't scare my engineers into silence just by fixing something." He stepped closer, lowering his voice. "So I'll ask again. Who are you?" The janitor's gaze drifted to the city skyline behind Kane. His face stayed calm, his voice even quieter than before. "Once, a long time ago, I built machines. Like that one. For people with more money than sense." He looked back at Kane. "But that was another life." Kane studied him carefully. Something in his expression shifted, curiosity mixed with caution. "You're not just talking about some hobby, are you? You were an engineer. Maybe more than that." The janitor didn't answer. He simply crossed his arms, waiting. Kane took that as a confirmation. After a long silence, Kane chuckled softly, though there was no humor in it. "Well, whatever you were, you embarrassed my entire staff today. And whether I like it or not, you won that car." He reached into his pocket and pulled out the keys, the sleek, black fob gleaming under the light. He tossed it lightly toward the janitor. The janitor caught it without looking. Then he set it gently on the desk. "I don't want your car." Kane blinked. "You don't want it?" The janitor shook his head. "I fixed the machine because it was broken, not for a prize." Kane stared at him, trying to read his face. No one turns down a car like that. Unless he paused, his voice lowering again. Unless you want something else. The janitor didn't speak right away. He turned slightly, looking back out at the skyline. The glow of the city lights reflected in his dark eyes. Finally he said, "What I want is simple. I want to keep doing my job, without your engineers whispering behind my back, without people thinking I'm here to show them up." Kane raised an eyebrow. "That's it? You could have my car, maybe even a promotion, and all you want is to mop floors in peace?" The janitor looked back at him.
Oh.
Not everyone needs to sit at the top of a building to be useful. His voice was calm, but there was weight to it, the kind of weight that made Kane pause. Before Kane could respond, there was a knock at the door. A young assistant stepped in nervously. "Sir, there's a situation." "With your staff?" Kane's eyes narrowed. "What kind of situation?" The assistant hesitated. "There," said. "Some of them think the janitor shouldn't be allowed near company equipment. There's talk in the break room. A few are saying he tampered with the prototype just so he could fix it later." Kane glanced at the janitor. The man's expression didn't change. No anger, no frustration. Just the same quiet calm. Kane exhaled slowly, then turned back to his assistant. "Tell them I'll handle it." The assistant nodded and slipped out. When the door closed, Kane faced the janitor again. "You see the problem, don't you? My staff already hates you for making them look weak. Now they're spreading rumors to protect their pride." The janitor finally moved, stepping closer to the desk. His voice, though quiet, carried a sharp edge. "I don't care if they like me. I don't care what they whisper. But if they keep crossing the line," his eyes locked on Kane's, "then I won't stay quiet forever." Kane held his gaze. For the first time since the meeting, he realized something. This man wasn't afraid of him, not at all. After a moment, Kane leaned back slightly, his expression shifting to something between respect and calculation. "Fine. You'll keep your job. I'll deal with the engineers. But something tells me this isn't the last time I'll need you." The janitor didn't reply. He simply turned, opened the office door, and walked out without another word. Kane watched him leave, his mind turning. This wasn't just some quiet man with a mop, and Kane knew deep down that whatever life this janitor had left behind, it wasn't done with him yet. The break room buzzed with tension. Usually it was a place for coffee, small talk, and quiet complaints about deadlines. But tonight, it was different. The air was thick. The laughter wasn't casual. It was sharp, forced, and bitter. Marcus sat at the center table. Leaning forward, his elbows resting on the scratched wood, a half-empty can of soda sat beside him, forgotten. Around him, 5 engineers and 2 technicians sat in a loose circle, their voices low. "This can't go on," Marcus said, his tone cold. "He humiliated all of us. Kane respects him now. Do you know what that means? It means every single one of us looks incompetent." One of the younger technicians, nervously tapping his pen, muttered, "But he fixed it. He couldn't." "What do you expect us to do? Pretend he didn't?" Marcus shot him a glare. "He's not a janitor. I don't care what he says he is. No one fixes a $12 million machine in 9 minutes without knowing things they shouldn't know. You really believe he's just here to mop floors?" The group exchanged uneasy glances. No one wanted to agree out loud. But deep down, none of them believed the janitor's story either, not after what they'd seen. Another engineer leaned in. "So, what do we do? Report him. To who, Kane?" "He'd laugh us out of the building. That guy just saved the prototype in the contract. Kane would probably fire us before he'd fire him." Marcus smirked slightly, though there was no humor in it. "We don't report him. We find out who he really is. And we make sure Kane knows the truth before he gets too comfortable trusting him." The technicians looked uneasy. One of them, a woman named Laura, frowned. "And if there's nothing to find, what if he really is just some old guy who used to work on machines before cleaning floors?" Marcus's expression hardened. "Then we make sure he slips up. Everyone has a past. Everyone has weaknesses. I'll find his." Laura hesitated. "Why are you so determined?" "I mean, he embarrassed you, sure, but why risk your job over this?" Marcus leaned back, his chair creaking softly. His jaw tightened as he stared at the floor for a moment. Because if Kane starts trusting him, it's only a matter of time before Kane stops trusting us. If we let that man get close to Kane, we're all replaceable. The words sank in. One by one, the others nodded slowly. They didn't like it. But Marcus was right. The janitor wasn't just a threat because he was skilled. He was a threat because he had made them all look useless. In front of their boss, meanwhile, far below the buzz of the break room, the janitor worked quietly in the maintenance tunnels. The air was cool and faintly metallic, the hum of machinery echoing through the long, dim corridors. His cart rolled softly over the concrete floor as he checked the building's old ventilation shafts. He wasn't thinking about Marcus or the engineers. He wasn't even thinking about Kane. His mind was elsewhere on the faint hum of the prototype above. He knew it would hold for now. But he also knew the company's systems were fragile. Too many corners had been cut. Too many upgrades skipped. He sighed softly. He had told Kane once years ago that cheap shortcuts lead to expensive failures. But that had been another life, another version of himself. Now, all he wanted was to do his work, keep the systems running, and avoid unnecessary attention. But after today, tension was something he couldn't avoid anymore. Back upstairs, Marcus had pulled out his phone. On the screen was a grainy photo, the janitor, taken from behind as he had fixed the prototype. Marcus scrolled, opening. A private chat with someone outside the company, a man he knew from his past, someone who could dig into records, fast. He typed, "Find everything you can on this man. Name, history, jobs, send it to me. Urgent." Oh. The reply came almost instantly. "Got it? Who is he?" Marcus stared at the photo before typing back. "That's what I need to know." He slipped his phone back into his pocket, his lips curling, into a faint, calculated smile. If the janitor really was hiding something, Marcus would find it. And when he did, Kane wouldn't see him as a savior anymore. Down in the tunnels, the janitor stopped. A faint echo of voices drifted down from a vent overhead. He couldn't make out the words, but he recognized Marcus's voice. Sharp, cold. Scheming, the janitor's jaw tightened for the first time that day. He didn't sigh, didn't shake his head. He simply reached into his cart, pulling out a small, battered notebook. Inside, written in clean, precise handwriting, were lists of building systems, maintenance logs, and a few phone numbers that didn't belong to any cleaning crew. He closed the notebook and slid it back into the cart. If Marcus wanted to dig, let him dig. But he wouldn't like what he found. The janitor picked up his mop, his face calm once more, and continued down the corridor. The steady sound of his footsteps echoed in the dark, blending with the low hum of the machines. Because he knew one thing with certainty, whatever Marcus was planning, it was going to come back to him. And when it did, the quiet man with the mop wouldn't be the one caught off guard. Late that night, the building was almost silent. Most employees had gone home. The offices, usually bright and buzzing, were now lit only by a few glowing exit signs and the hum of vending machines. But on the 12th floor, Marcus and 3 engineers stayed behind. They weren't working on the prototype. They weren't fixing code. They were waiting. Marcus paced near the glass wall, his reflection dark and sharp against the city lights outside. "He's always here late," he muttered, checking his watch. "Always walking these halls when everyone else is gone. We'll catch him tonight." One of the engineers, nervous, adjusted his glasses, and if he's not doing anything wrong, Marcus stopped pacing, turning slowly toward him. "Then we make it look like he is. Kane doesn't need facts, just needs doubt, and I'll give it to him." The others shifted uncomfortably. No one wanted to go this far, but Marcus's anger was infectious. And his fear, the fear of being replaced, was something they all felt. At that same moment, several floors below, the janitor pushed his cart down a dim corridor. The wheels squeaked softly against the polished tile. His flashlight beam cut through the shadows as he checked the vents and electrical panels. He wasn't in a rush. His routine was always the same: clean, inspect, repair, small faults, keep the building running. But tonight, his senses were sharper. He felt something in the air, a heaviness. Like eyes watching from somewhere above, he stopped near a supply closet and listened. Nothing, just the hum of the ventilation system. But his instincts told him the quiet wasn't normal. Upstairs, Marcus and his team were setting their plan into motion. One engineer slipped into Kane's private lab, holding a small device no bigger than a deck of cards. It wasn't dangerous, but it would look bad. When attached to the prototype systems, it caused short, random power surges. Make the machine glitch, enough to make it seem like someone was tampering with it. They didn't need proof the janitor was guilty. They just needed him to be nearby when it failed. Marcus would handle the rest. As the device clicked into place, the lights in the lab flickered. The prototype's hum faltered for a second, then steadied. The engineer stepped back quickly. Set. When it surges, Kane will think the janitor's at fault. Marcus smirked. Good. Now we wait. The janitor arrived on the 12th floor just after midnight. He pushed his cart slowly, his eyes scanning the halls as he made his rounds. The floor was too quiet. No security guards, no late working staff, no stray voices. Only the faint hum of the prototype in the lab ahead. He stopped near the glass door, peering inside. The machine glowed softly, steady. For now, but something felt wrong. A faint ticking noise echoed from its side panel, a sound it shouldn't make. The janitor's brow furrowed. He stepped closer, kneeling to listen. It wasn't a mechanical fault. It was something added, something not part of the original system. Before he could investigate further, the lab lights suddenly brightened. The glass door behind him slid open with a soft hiss. Marcus and his engineers stepped inside, their expressions sharp and triumphant. Well, Marcus said, his voice dripping with fake surprise. Look who we found sneaking around the prototype, again. The janitor didn't stand. He didn't react to Marcus's tone. He simply said, the machine's been tampered with. This isn't an accident, Marcus chuckled. Of course it has. And who do you think Kane will believe did it? The engineers who've worked here for years, or the janitor caught with his hands on a $12 million prototype? The other engineers smirked, some nervously, others with forced confidence. One of them raised his phone, snapping a quick picture. Another muttered, got it. Proof. The janitor finally stood, his posture calm but firm. You planted something. Can hear it ticking from the relay chamber. You want Kane to think? It's me. Marcus stepped closer, his smirk widening. And what are you going to do about it? Call security. Tell Kane. Go ahead. Who do you think he'll believe? The room was silent for a moment. The hum of the machine filled the space like a heartbeat. Then the janitor spoke softly. You really want to play this game? Marcus's smirk faltered slightly. There was something in the janitor's tone, not anger, not fear, but certainty. Like he already knew how this would end. Before Marcus could respond, the prototype flickered. The lights dimmed. A warning alarm began to beep softly as the system detected a surge. Engineers looked at each other, feigning shock. Marcus turned to the janitor. Looks like Kane will have to hear about this in the morning. I'm sure he'll love seeing the photos. The janitor didn't reply. He simply reached into his cart, pulling out a small, slim device. He pressed a button, and a soft click echoed from the prototype. The ticking stopped. The warning alarm silenced. The machine steadied, humming smoothly again. Marcus froze. What did you just do? The janitor looked at him calmly. You planted a surge device. I disabled it. Want to try again? The engineer stared, wide-eyed. How did he know exactly what to do? How did he disable it so quickly, without even opening the machine? Marcus's jaw tightened. This wasn't going the way he had planned. The janitor stepped closer, his voice low. Next time you want to frame someone, don't use tech that came out 10 years ago. I helped design that circuit. I know every fault it has. The room went dead silent. The engineers stared at him, their confidence draining. And Marcus, for the first time, had no words. The janitor didn't wait for a response. He turned, pushed his cart toward the door, and said quietly over his shoulder, "Clean up your mess before Kane finds out, or I'll make sure he knows." who really touched his machine. The door hissed open, and he disappeared into the hallway, leaving the stunned engineers in silence. The faint hum of the prototype followed him, steady and strong. For the first time, Marcus realized something. This wasn't just a janitor with a knack for machines. This was someone who had built systems far more advanced than anything in this building. Someone who knew things none of them could even understand. And if they weren't careful, they weren't just going to lose their jobs. They were going to find out who this man really was, and they weren't sure they wanted to know. The next morning, the building felt different. The usual chatter of employees filled the halls, but there was a nervous energy underneath it. Everyone had heard whispers about what happened the night before. The janitor had been seen near the prototype again. Marcus was telling anyone who would listen that Kane needed to keep an eye on him, but Kane didn't take rumors at face value. He rarely did. The CEO stood in his office, the city skyline glowing behind him as he made a quiet phone call. His voice was calm, but his eyes were sharp. "Run a background check," he said simply. "Name's Elijah Brooks. Works here as a janitor. I want everything. Employment records, past addresses, military, government, anything." There was a pause on the line. Then a voice replied, "Understood. How far back do you want us to dig?" Kane's lips curled faintly. "As far back as records go. I don't care if it's 50 years. Find out who this man really is." He ended the call and looked out at the city, his fingers drumming lightly on the glass. This wasn't about the car anymore. It wasn't even about the prototype. It was about control. And Kane didn't like not knowing who was walking around his company, quietly fixing problems his engineers couldn't touch. Meanwhile, on the maintenance floor, Elijah the janitor worked as if nothing had changed. He replaced a faulty air filter, tightened a valve in one of the cooling systems, and swept the corridor floor, his movements calm and precise. But he could feel the shift in the air. People watched him differently now. Some stared with open curiosity. Others whispered when he passed. He didn't mind. He had lived through worse. Whispers didn't bother him. But he knew something bigger was coming. Something he couldn't sweep away with a mop. Upstairs, Marcus was already pushing his story. Harder. In the lab, he leaned over a group of engineers, speaking just loud enough for the gossip to spread. "I told Kane last night. The guy was tampering with the prototype. I caught him red-handed. If I hadn't walked in, who knows what damage he'd have done." One of the engineers hesitated, "But didn't you say the prototype was fine? This morning? No damage at all?" Marcus's jaw tightened. He must have covered his tracks. The guy's not stupid. Think about it. How does a janitor even know how to fix a machine like that? Someone taught him. Someone dangerous. Murmurs grew. By the time the conversation reached the other end of the floor, the story had already changed. Now people were saying the janitor wasn't just tampering, he was sabotaging the company. And by lunchtime, someone whispered the word spy. Didn't step in immediately. He wanted facts, not gossip. But by the afternoon, his private investigator called back. The man's tone was careful, almost nervous. "Sir, we found some things. And some gaps." Kane leaned forward in his chair. "What kind of gaps?" The investigator hesitated. "Well, according to official records, Elijah Brooks doesn't exist for about 15 years. No tax filings, no employment, no property. Then, suddenly, 5 years ago, he appears as a janitor for a small chain of companies before landing here. But here's the strange part. Before that gap, he worked as well, not a janitor." Kane's voice lowered. "What did he do?" The investigator's reply was slow, deliberate. He was a systems architect. High-level defense contracts, classified work. I can't access most of it, but from what I could find, he designed advanced prototypes, machines not far from what your company is building now. And then he just disappears. Kane sat back, his mind racing. A defense systems architect. Disappeared for 15 years, now pushing a mop in his company, fixing machines like he never stopped building them. "What else?" Kane asked. "One more thing," the investigator added. "He was discharged from one of his contracts under unusual circumstances, Something about an incident overseas. The details are sealed. But sir, people don't just walk away from that kind of work, unless something serious happened. Kane didn't answer right away. He stared out at the skyline. Again, the pieces fitting together in his mind. Elijah Brooks wasn't a spy, at least not for another company, but he was definitely not just a janitor. That evening, Kane made a decision, called Marcus into his office first. The engineer entered confident, expecting praise for his warnings. Instead, Kane's voice was cold. "I don't like gossip, Marcus. I don't like half-truths. And I really don't like engineers who try to cover their failures by pointing fingers." Marcus froze. "Sir, I was only Kane," cut him off with a glare. "Save it. I know you. Tried to frame Brooks last night. Don't bother denying it. The prototype's logs don't lie, and neither do the security feeds." Marcus's face went pale. Kane leaned closer. "If you ever try to undermine my staff again, any of my staff, you won't just lose your job. You'll wish that's all you lost." Marcus swallowed hard, his bravado gone. "Yes, sir. Get out," Kane said simply. Marcus didn't hesitate. He left without another word, his steps quick and unsteady. Once Marcus was gone, Kane pressed a button on his desk phone. "Bring Elijah Brooks to my office," he said. His voice was calm, but there was an edge to it, the kind that made his assistant hurry without question as he waited. Kane stood by the window, his reflection sharp against the city lights. He wasn't angry. He wasn't afraid. He was curious. And, if he was honest with himself, a little uneasy, who exactly was Elijah Brooks? And what would he do when he realized Kane now knew the truth about his past? The CEO's office was silent. No sounds from the city outside, no chatter from the halls. Just the soft hum of the air system and the faint ticking of Kane's watch. Elijah Brooks, the janitor, stood near the door. Calm as always, his hands loosely at his sides. Kane stood by his desk, his posture straight, his gaze sharp. For a long moment, neither man spoke. The tension in the room felt heavy, almost physical, like a storm about to break. Finally, Kane spoke. "I know who you are, Brooks." His voice was low, measured. "You're not just a janitor. You're a systems architect. Defense contracts. Machines like the one downstairs? You helped build the first of their kind?" Elijah didn't flinch. He didn't confirm or deny it. He just looked at Kane, his dark eyes steady and calm. Kane took a step closer. "I know you've disappeared for 15 years. No job records, no tax filings, nothing. People don't vanish like that unless they're hiding something, so tell me." His voice lowered, sharper now. "What are you really doing here, Elijah?" Finally moved, walking slowly to the window. The city lights reflected in the glass as he looked out, his voice even. "Do you know what happens to people who build things for governments, Kane? Machines meant to change the balance of power?" Kane didn't answer. He simply waited. Elijah's gaze stayed on the skyline. "They use you, and when the work is done, they erase you. You stop being a person. You're just a file, locked, away where no one can find you, till someone decides you're useful again." He turned his head slightly, his calm expression holding a trace of something colder now. "I didn't disappear because I wanted to. I disappeared because they made me." Kane's brow furrowed. "They who?" Elijah's lips curved faintly. But it wasn't a smile. "People you'll never meet. And if you're smart, you won't try." Kane studied him carefully. There was no fear in Elijah's tone, no desperation to prove himself innocent, only calm certainty.
It wasn't the
voice of a man making excuses. It was the voice of someone who had lived through something Kane couldn't even imagine. "So," Kane said slowly, "you're telling me you're not here to spy. You're not here to sabotage. You're just, what? Cleaning floors for fun, Elijah?" Finally turned from the window, facing Kane fully. "I'm here because I want to be invisible. This job lets me stay out of sight. No contracts, no attention. Just quiet work and a paycheck that doesn't ask questions." Paused, his gaze steady. "But your engineers can't mind their own business. They see someone do what they can't. And suddenly, I'm a problem." Kane exhaled softly, leaning back against his desk. "You are a problem, Brooks, not because I think you're dangerous, but because you're too good at what you do. People like you don't just mop floors, and I need to know why you're choosing to now." Elijah's expression didn't change. For a long moment, he simply stood there, silent. Then finally, he said quietly, "Because the last time I worked on machines like yours, people died." Words hung in the air, heavy and cold. Cain didn't speak right away. He could see the weight behind those words, the way Elijah's calm eyes held something deeper, something darker. This wasn't a man running from failure. This was a man running from his own creations. Cain straightened, his voice lower now, more measured. "I'm not interested in your past, Brooks, but I am interested in what you can do. My company needs people who understand these systems, people like you. I can offer you more than a mop and a paycheck, a real position, triple your pay." Elijah didn't move, didn't blink. "No." Cain's brow furrowed. "No." Elijah shook his head. "I told you. I don't want attention. I don't want power. I don't want to build machines anymore. I just want to keep the lights on and the floors clean. That's it." Cain stepped closer, his voice sharpening again. "Yet, can't expect me to ignore what you are. I don't care what you think you want. Men like you don't get to just fade away. Not when you can fix a $12 million prototype with a screwdriver and a stopwatch." Elijah's gaze stayed steady, his voice calm but firm. "Then you need to decide, Cain. Are you going to let me keep working quietly, or are you going to make me leave?" The challenge in his tone was subtle, but it was there. He wasn't threatening Cain, but he wasn't pleading either. He was giving the CEO a choice. For a moment, Cain said nothing. He simply studied the man in front of him, a man who had once built machines powerful enough to change wars, and now wanted nothing but a mop and a quiet life. Finally, Cain spoke. "You can stay, for now. But if there's anything I need to." "No, you tell me before someone else does." "Understood?" Elijah gave a small nod. "Understood." Cain stepped back, his expression still guarded. "Good, you can go." Elijah turned and walked toward the door. But before he left, he stopped, his hand resting on the handle. Without looking back, he said quietly, "You might want to watch your engineers, Cain. Some of them are more dangerous to your company than I'll ever be." Then he opened the door and disappeared down the hall, his footsteps fading into the quiet of the evening. Cain stood in his office for a long moment, staring at the closed door. For the first time, the powerful CEO realized something unsettling. He wasn't sure if he had just spoken to a man running from his past, or a man preparing for something even bigger than anyone in the building could see. Marcus sat alone in his apartment, the glow of his laptop reflecting in his tired eyes. The blinds were drawn. The room smelled faintly of stale coffee and frustration. He hadn't slept much since Cain had torn into him. Every time Marcus closed his eyes, he saw Elijah Brooks standing there, calm, unshaken, making him look like a fool. And the worst part? Cain had defended the janitor. Cain, the man who had always trusted Marcus, had turned his back on him. Marcus clenched his jaw. He couldn't let it end like this. If Cain wouldn't listen to him, then Marcus would. Find the truth on his own. And when he had proof, Cain would have no choice but to see Elijah for what he really was. He opened a new message on his encrypted chat app. The same contact he'd used before, the man who could dig into government and military records for a price. Marcus typed, "Need deeper records on Elijah Brooks. Defense contracts, overseas incidents, especially why he vanished for 15 years. I'll pay double. No limits." The reply came seconds later. "You sure you want this? People connected to those files don't like being found." Marcus hesitated only for a moment. "Find it. I don't care who I upset." The next morning, Marcus walked into the company. Building like nothing was wrong. He greeted the front desk, smiled at his fellow engineers, even joked about deadlines. But inside, he was wired with tension. His contact had promised him something by noon, something that could finally prove. The janitor wasn't what he seemed. At exactly 11:57 a.m., Marcus's phone buzzed. A new message. One single file. He slipped into a quiet corner and opened it. The first page was simple. A government seal, blacked outlines, and a name, Elijah Brooks. Below it, a list of past contracts. Defense prototypes, communications. Arrays, autonomous systems. Then Marcus reached the section marked Incident Report. Most of it was blacked out, but one sentence stood out, clear and chilling. Subject authorized emergency override during field operation. Resulted in the neutralization of 12 operatives. Classified. Termination order issued status unknown. Marcus's eyes widened. Termination order? Neutralization? What had this man done? Final page was worse. A photograph, old but clear. Elijah, younger, standing beside a massive machine in a desert compound. In the background, soldiers armed, watching him like he wasn't one of them. Below the photo, another note. Last confirmed sighting, 15 years ago. Believed deceased. Handle with caution. Marcus's breath quickened. This was it. This was proof. Kane couldn't ignore this, not when Elijah Brooks wasn't even supposed to exist. He quickly downloaded the file to a secure drive, pocketing it. He didn't notice the tiny green light blinking on his laptop, a remote trace his contact had embedded, without telling him. By the time Marcus stood and left the break room, a signal had already pinged somewhere far away. Someone else now knew that Elijah Brooks's file had been opened. That night, Marcus waited outside the building long after most employees had gone home. He knew Elijah stayed late, working in the shadows. Marcus didn't want to just show Kane the file. He wanted to confront Elijah himself, see if he could break that calm mask the man always wore. Around 10 p.m., saw him, the janitor, pushing his cart across the lobby toward the elevator. Marcus stepped out of the shadows. Brooks. Elijah stopped, turning slowly. His expression didn't change. Marcus. Marcus held up the drive between two fingers. I know who you are now. Or at least I know enough. Defense contracts? A termination order? They think you're dead. But here you are, cleaning floors like none of it ever happened. Elijah's eyes flickered just for a second. Then they were calm again. What do you want, Marcus? Marcus smirked, though. His hand trembled slightly. I want the truth. I want to know why a man like you is hiding here. And I want you gone before you get all of us killed. Elijah didn't answer right away. He looked at the drive, then back at Marcus. His voice was low, steady. You shouldn't have opened that file. Marcus frowned. Why? Because it proves. You're dangerous? Elijah shook his head slowly. No, because now they know where to find you. Marcus blinked. They. Before Elijah could reply, the building lights flickered. A faint hum, low and unnatural, rolled through the lobby. Elijah's gaze shifted toward the front doors. Through the glass, black SUVs were pulling up silently, one by one. Men in dark gear stepped out, no logos, no markings, moving with military precision. Elijah exhaled softly. They're not here for me, Marcus. They're here because you opened the door. Marcus's face went pale. What? What do you mean? Elijah picked up his toolkit calmly, his movements deliberate. It means you just brought the people I've been hiding from straight to our front door, and now we both have a problem. Marcus glanced toward the doors, panic rising as the men advanced. What do we do, Lee? He whispered. Elijah finally looked at him, his calm eyes sharper now, colder. You do exactly what I say. If you don't, none of us will make it out alive tonight. For the first time, Marcus realized something terrifying. The quiet janitor he'd spent weeks mocking was the only person in the building who knew how to deal with what was coming. And the look in Elijah's eyes said only one thing. Whatever. Past he'd been running from. It's about to catch up with them all. The lobby lights dimmed to a soft glow as the first black-clad operatives stepped inside. They moved like shadows, their boots silent on the polished marble. Each man carried gear that didn't look standard: compact weapons, strange scanners, and comes with no visible logos. This wasn't a police raid. This wasn't corporate security. Marcus backed away, his breath shallow. He looked at Elijah, whispering, Who are they? Why are they here? Elijah didn't answer. Calmly closed his toolkit, set it on the cleaning cart, and pulled out something Marcus had never seen before, a small, sleek device that looked like a cross between a phone and a remote control. "What is that?" Marcus stammered. Elijah's voice was calm, even. "A signal disruptor. If their running tactical comes, this will buy us a few minutes before they realize the building systems are jammed." He pressed a button. A faint pulse spread through the air, so soft Marcus barely felt it, like a ripple in the atmosphere. Above them, the lobby lights flickered once, then steadied. Outside, the black SUVs went dark, their headlights shutting off as if something had drained their power. The operatives froze, checking their gear. One of them tapped his headset, confusion flashing across his face. Marcus stared at Elijah, wide-eyed. You were ready for this?" Elijah finally looked at him, his voice low. "I've been ready for this for 15 years. I just hoped I'd never need to be again." The first operative stepped forward, hand raised in a silent signal. The others fanned out, their movements precise, practiced. One pulled out a scanning device, sweeping it across the lobby. Screen lit up with lines and numbers Marcus couldn't understand. "They're looking for me," Elijah murmured, more to himself than to Marcus. "We'll sweep the entire building until they find me. They don't care about the company. They don't care about Kane. They just want to clean up loose ends." Marcus's throat tightened. "Loose ends? You mean kill you?" Elijah's gaze stayed steady on the operatives. "And anyone who gets in their way." Marcus swallowed hard, his panic rising. "Then what do? We can't fight them." We're not fighting them," Elijah cut in, his tone calm but firm. "We're outsmarting them. Follow me. Stay quiet. Do exactly what I say." Elijah pushed his cart toward a maintenance door at the far end of the lobby. Marcus followed, his steps unsteady, glancing over his shoulder as the operatives advanced. The cart's squeaky wheel echoed softly in the tense silence. Just as they reached the door, one of the operatives turned sharply, spotting movement. He raised his hand, pointing directly at them. "Move," Elijah ordered quietly. Marcus didn't hesitate. He slipped through the maintenance door just as the first operative shouted something in a language Marcus didn't recognize. The door shut behind them with a soft click, plunging them into the narrow maintenance corridor. The walls were lined with pipes and electrical panels, the air warm and faintly metallic. Elijah moved quickly, his steps sure and silent. Marcus struggled to keep up, whispering, "Where are we going?" "To the sublevel," Elijah said. "They'll expect us to head for the roof or the parking garage. The sublevel gives us time to disappear." Marcus glanced back nervously. "What happens when they catch up?" Elijah didn't look at him. "They won't. Not if I do my job." They descended 2 flights of stairs, the sound of distant boots echoing faintly above. The operatives were fast, too fast. Marcus could hear their voices now, calm and methodical, calling out search zones. They weren't rushing. They knew they would corner their target eventually. Elijah stopped near a locked service panel, pulling a key from his pocket. The key wasn't standard, long, thin, with a strange notch pattern. He slid it into the lock and turned it, the panel clicking open to reveal a narrow tunnel behind the wall. Marcus blinked. "That's not on the building map." Elijah's lips curved faintly, the closest thing to a smile Marcus had ever seen. "That's because I built it." Before Marcus could ask anything, Elijah gestured for him to crawl inside. The tunnel was barely wide enough for a person, dark, except for the faint glow of emergency lights strung along the ceiling. As Marcus crawled, he whispered, "You built this?" "When?" "Before I disappeared," Elijah said simply, closing the panel behind them. "Every building I designed had one of these. It's not for escape, for control. If you know where they lead, you can get anywhere unseen." They moved through the tunnel for several minutes, the hum of the building's systems vibrating softly through the metal walls. Finally, Elijah stopped at another panel, this one opening into a dimly lit sublevel. Storage room. He stepped out first, scanning the area, then motioned Marcus to follow. The room was lined with old crates, shelves of unused equipment, and a heavy steel door at the far end. Elijah walked to the center of the room, setting his disruptor on. A crate. Marcus looked around nervously. Are we safe here? Elijah shook his head. No one's ever safe when these people come. But we have a little time. He crouched beside the disruptor, adjusting its settings. Their comms will reset soon. When that happens, they'll realize where we went. We need to be ready. Marcus stared at him. Ready? Ready? How? We can't fight them, Elijah. Elijah looked up, his calm gaze sharp now. Then don't fight. Stay out of the way. If they find us, you hide. You let me deal with them. Marcus hesitated. What? What exactly are you planning to do? Elijah's hands stilled on the disruptor. He looked at Marcus for a long moment, then said quietly, what I swore I'd never do again. Before Marcus could ask more, the disruptor emitted a soft beep. The pulse stopped. Somewhere above, the building lights flickered back to normal. Elijah exhaled slowly, standing. They know where we are now. Marcus's heart pounded. Then what happens next? Elijah glanced at the steel door, his expression unreadable. Next, we stop running. The hum of the building felt louder in the silence of the sublevel. Marcus could hear his own breathing, fast and shaky, as he stood beside Elijah. Somewhere beyond the steel door, the black-clad operatives were closing in. Their boots echoed faintly through the concrete corridors, steady and controlled. They were hunting, not rushing. Elijah checked the disruptor one last time. The screen glowed red, its pulse was fully drained now. He pocketed the device and turned toward Marcus. Stay behind the crates. Don't make a sound. No matter what happens, do not move until I tell you, Elijah said. Marcus's voice was low, shaky. You're not really a janitor, are you? Elijah's gaze was calm, his tone even. Not tonight. The heavy steel door creaked. The first operative appeared, tall, silent, weapon raised, didn't hesitate, swept his scanner. Across the room, its faint blue light flashing as it locked on to Elijah immediately. Elijah Brooks. A voice crackled through a modulator on the operative's chest. You've been located. You're to be taken in for extraction. Surrender. And no unnecessary force will be used. Elijah didn't move, didn't raise his hands, didn't even blink. He simply stood there, his posture loose but controlled. Second operative stepped in, then a third, both moving to flank him. One raised a device, a small flat disc, and slid it across the floor, hitting Elijah's feet, emitting a faint hum. A restraint field. Elijah looked down at it. For a brief second, then without warning, his foot came down hard. The device sparked once, twice, and went dead. The operatives froze. One spoke sharply into his cum. But before the words could leave his mouth, Elijah was moving. What happened next was fast. Too fast for Marcus to fully process. Elijah lunged, his movements fluid, practiced, nothing like the calm janitor who pushed a mop through the halls. His hand hooked the first operative's wrist, twisting the weapon free in a single motion. The man dropped to his knees as Elijah shoved him aside with precise force, sending him crashing into the stacked crates. The second operative swung his weapon, but Elijah had already closed the distance. He drove his elbow into the man's throat, just enough to knock the wind out of him, then swept his legs out from under him. The man hit the floor hard, his weapon clattering across the room. The third operative raised his compact rifle, but Elijah didn't flinch. With one smooth motion, he yanked the crate beside him, tipping it into the rifle's path. The weapon fired, the shot thudding into the crate instead of Elijah. Before the operative could adjust, Elijah closed in, gripping the rifle and twisting it from his hands like it was nothing. One quick strike with the butt of the weapon, and the man was down. Groaning on the concrete, Marcus crouched behind the crates, frozen in shock. He had seen fights before, street fights, bar scuffles, even some basic self-defense training. But this was something else entirely. Elijah didn't fight like a soldier, fought like a ghost, efficient, silent, every move designed. To end the fight in seconds, the three operatives lay on the floor, alive but motionless. Elijah knelt beside one, pulling the man's headset off and clicking a switch. The cum went silent, then burst with static. They know I'm here now, Elijah murmured, more to himself than to Marcus. They'll send the rest. Marcus finally found his voice. His words trembled. What? What are you? Elijah didn't look at him. He was already stripping the operatives of their scanners and weapons, moving with calm precision. A mistake, he said quietly, and tonight I have to fix it. The lights above flickered again. Little footsteps echoed in the hall, heavier. This time more boots, moving in unison. The rest of the team was coming. Elijah stood, handing Marcus one of the scavenged scanners. Stay low. Follow me when I move. If they see you, drop the scanner and freeze. Don't speak. Don't run. They're not here for you. Marcus gripped the scanner tightly, his palms sweaty. What about you? What happens when they catch you? Elijah finally looked at him, his calm eyes holding a glint of something colder now. They won't catch me, not tonight. The steel. Door burst open again, this time with force. 5 more operatives stormed in, weapons drawn, scanners already active. The leader barked a command, his voice mechanical through the modulator. Elijah didn't wait. He moved with the same precision as before, but this time he wasn't just defending himself. He was dismantling their formation. A sudden flash. Elijah had pulled a small smoke charge from his pocket, snapping it against the floor. The room filled with a dense, white haze. The lights above flickering as if the charge had scrambled the circuits. Through the smoke, Marcus could hear it, the sound of strikes, grunts, weapons clattering. No gunfire. Just fast, controlled chaos. When the smoke cleared, 4 operatives were down. The leader remained, his weapons still aimed squarely at Elijah. He spoke, his tone colder than before. Orders are to bring you in, dead or alive. Elijah tilted his head slightly. Then, you're going to fail your orders. Before the leader could fire, Elijah moved faster than Marcus thought humanly possible. Single strike to the weapon, a twist, and the rifle clattered to the floor. Elijah grabbed the man's vest, yanking him forward, and slammed him against the crate hard enough to knock the breath from his lungs. The leader crumpled to the ground unconscious. Elijah stood over him, silent, his breathing steady, as if the fight hadn't even winded him. Marcus slowly stood from behind the crates, his voice barely above a whisper. That wasn't self-defense, that was... He trailed off, unable to find the words. Elijah finally turned to him. His expression was unreadable. They'll send more. Next time, they won't stop at me. They'll take anyone who saw this. Marcus's stomach turned cold. You mean? Elijah gave a single, small nod. They can't risk witnesses. Which means you need to decide right now, do you want to live through tonight or not? Marcus swallowed hard, his throat dry. What? What do I have to do? Elijah's gaze held his for a long, tense moment. Then he said quietly, You. Follow me, and you never ever ask me what I did before I held him up. The room was silent except for Marcus's quick breathing and the faint hum of the building's systems. Elijah stood calmly over the unconscious operatives, scanning the floor as if calculating his next move. He didn't celebrate. Look relieved. His expression stayed the same, steady, unreadable. Marcus finally spoke, his voice trembling. They'll send more, won't they? Elijah gave a small nod. Yes, they won't stop. Not until they have me or I disappear. Again, Marcus's hands shook as he gripped the scanner Elijah had given him. Disappear? How? We're surrounded. There's no way out except the main exits, and they've got people watching everything. Elijah finally looked at him, his tone calm. There's always a way out. You just have to know where to look. He walked to the far corner of the room where a stack of old crates covered part of the concrete wall. With precise movements, he pushed them aside, revealing a metal panel embedded into the floor, almost invisible at first glance. He knelt, pressing his hand against a small square near the edge. A faint click echoed, and the panel slid open, revealing a narrow staircase descending into darkness. Marcus's eyes widened. What is this? Some kind of storage shaft. Elijah shook his head. No, this is the real sublevel. It's the one not on any blueprints. They stepped into the darkness, the panel sliding shut above them with a soft hiss. The staircase was narrow and cold, the air damp, carrying the faint smell of metal and oil. Elijah moved first, his steps soundless. while Marcus followed carefully, his heart pounding louder than their footsteps. As they descended, Marcus whispered, "You built this, didn't you?" Elijah didn't turn around. "I built part of it. The rest was already here, long before this building was finished." Marcus frowned in confusion. "What do you mean, long before?" "This company's only been around for Elijah cut him off," his tone flat. "Not everything under our feet belongs to this company. Some of it belongs to people who don't like leaving loose ends." The stairwell ended at another door. Heavy steel, secured with a keypad that didn't use numbers, but a sequence of shapes. Elijah entered the code without hesitation. The lock released with a deep metallic clunk. When the door opened, Marcus froze. Beyond it stretched a massive underground chamber far larger than any basement he had ever seen. Dim lights lined the ceiling, casting long shadows across rows of dormant machines, crates, and sealed containers marked with codes Marcus didn't recognize. The walls were lined with cables and pipes, humming faintly like the heartbeat of some buried creature. Marcus whispered, "What is all this?" Elijah stepped forward, scanning the chamber. Leftovers, things they built and hid, things they didn't want the public or governments to find. Marcus's voice shook. "You mean we're under a black site?" "Under our own company?" Elijah's lips curved faintly, though it wasn't a smile. "Your company didn't build this. They just built on top of it. Most people never know it's here. That's the point." Marcus's grip on the scanner tightened. "Why bring me here? Wouldn't it be safer to just run?" Elijah finally turned to him. "Run where? Second we leave the building, we're targets. Out there, we're prey down here." He gestured toward the rows of machines. "Have options." They walked deeper into the chamber, their footsteps echoing softly. Marcus couldn't stop staring at the sealed containers. Some were as large as trucks, others small and cube-like, but all bore the same warning symbol, A. Black triangle with 3 rings around it. "What's in those?" Marcus asked nervously. Elijah glanced at them briefly. "Prototypes, weapons, systems even governments couldn't control. Some of them I helped design, most of them I wish I hadn't." Marcus swallowed hard. "Can they help us?" Elijah's gaze hardened slightly. "They can keep us alive. But if we use any of this, there's no going back. Once they know we've touched these systems, they'll send more than a retrieval team." Marcus stopped walking. "More than a team? What does that even mean?" Elijah turned, his calm expression sharper now. "It means if we open the wrong crate, we're not just running from operatives. We're running from an entire network, designed to erase people like me and anyone standing next to me." A faint sound echoed from the stairwell above the metallic clank of boots. Marcus's head snapped up. "They're coming down here, aren't they?" Elijah's voice stayed calm, but his steps quickened as he moved toward a console built into the far wall. "Yes, they'll sweep this chamber, just like the rest of the building. And once they realize what's stored here, they'll lock it down. Permanently." Marcus's panic spiked. "Then what do we do? You said we can't run. Are we supposed to just fight all of them?" Elijah placed his hand on the console, the screen flickering to life. "No, we don't fight. We disappear." Marcus frowned, confused. "Disappear? How?" Elijah tapped a series of commands into the console. The hum in the chamber grew louder as a large section of the floor began to shift, revealing a circular platform beneath them. It lowered slowly, like an elevator, revealing yet another tunnel beneath. Marcus stared, his voice barely a whisper. "How deep does this place go?" Elijah finally looked at him, his expression unreadable, deep enough to vanish. "If we move fast, we can be gone before they even know which way we went." The platform descended into darkness, the chamber, above growing smaller as the sounds of the approaching operatives echoed louder. Marcus glanced up nervously. "What happens when they find this platform? Won't they follow us?" Elijah's hands moved over a small control panel embedded into the platform's railing. "They'll try, but once we reach the next level, they won't be able to." Marcus hesitated. "Why not?" Elijah's eyes stayed on the controls, his voice calm but cold. "Because I'm sealing the upper levels behind us. Once we're below, no one gets in or out without the codes. And I'm the only one who still knows them." Marcus's stomach twisted. You mean we'll be trapped down there? Elijah finally met his gaze. No, we'll be free. Anyone chasing us? His voice lowered. They'll be buried with the ghosts this place was built for. As the platform sank into the darkness, the last thing Marcus heard was the distant clang of boots hitting the chamber floor above. The operatives were seconds away from discovering where they had gone, and Marcus realized whatever lay beneath them, whatever Elijah was about to do, there was no turning back now. The platform descended into darkness, the hum of machinery echoing like a distant storm. Marcus clung to the railing, his knuckles white. The air grew colder the farther they dropped, heavy with the metallic scent of old machinery and dust. Above them, the faint clang of boots faded as the chamber door sealed shut. Finally, the platform slowed and stopped with a low hiss. Dim emergency lights flickered on, revealing a corridor unlike anything Marcus had ever seen. The walls weren't concrete like the rest of the building, they were smooth. Reinforced metal, lined with conduits that pulsed with a faint blue light. The floor was etched with strange markings, numbers and codes Marcus didn't recognize. It felt older, as if this place had been here long before their company ever existed. Marcus swallowed hard. What? Is this place? It doesn't. I feel like a basement. It feels like... He hesitated, unable to find the word. Elijah stepped off the platform, his steps confident, as if he'd walked these halls before. It's not a basement, it's a failsafe, built for one reason, to control the things they couldn't control. Followed cautiously, things like what? Weapons? Experiments? People. Elijah's eyes flickered, just for a moment. All of the above. They reached a heavy blast door at the end of the corridor. Elijah placed his palm against a scanner built into the wall. The machine beeped, hesitated, then scanned his face. The system paused for what felt like forever. Then, with a deep mechanical groan, the blast door slid open. Inside was a circular chamber filled with consoles, monitors, and dormant machines. At its center stood a large, sealed pod, connected to dozens of cables and glowing panels. Its surface pulsed faintly like it was alive. Marcus froze. What is that? Elijah stepped closer, his voice quiet but steady. The reason there. Here. The reason I had to disappear. Marcus stared at the pod. What's inside it? Elijah turned his gaze toward Marcus. Something I built. Something I swore I'd never let them use again. Marcus's throat tightened. You built. Whatever that is. And it's the reason they're hunting you? Elijah nodded slowly. When I worked for them, I created things that could change wars. Systems that could think, react, even kill without human orders. This was the last one I designed before. I walked away. Marcus took a step back. So they're here too. Take you to finish it. Elijah's eyes hardened. They don't care about me. They care about this. Yeah. If they get their hands on it, every rule, every law, every country that ever tried to stop them becomes meaningless. Marcus glanced nervously at the pod. Then, what's your plan? Hide it. Destroy it. Use it. Elijah's gaze shifted back to the glowing machine. His voice lowered. I can't destroy it, not without triggering every alarm they've got. The second I start tampering, they'll drop everything to get down here. And if they capture it intact... He trailed off, shaking his head. Marcus felt his chest tighten. Then what? He said we can't run, we can't fight. What's left? Elijah turned to him, his expression unreadable. We give them what they want. On our terms. Marcus's eyes widened. You mean you're going to hand it over? After everything? Elijah shook his head. No, I'm going to. Make them think they're getting it. While we make sure no one walks out of here with it alive. Marcus froze. That sounds like suicide. There's at least a dozen operatives still up there. Elijah stepped toward one of the consoles, his hands moving over the controls with ease, as if no time had passed since he last used them. They don't know what this place really is. They think it's just a storage site. But beneath this chamber is something even they forgot about: the failsafe system. It can lock down every exit, flood these tunnels with gas, even collapse entire sections if triggered. Marcus's stomach dropped. You're going to bury them, along with this machine? Along with us? Elijah's calm gaze met his. Not us. There's an emergency transit line deeper below, built for cases like this. We time it right, we take that line, and vanish before the failsafe triggers. They get sealed in with what they came for. No one else ever finds this place again? Marcus hesitated, fear twisting his gut. And if we don't time it right, Elijah's tone stayed flat, then we get buried with them. The console beeped as Elijah's fingers danced across the controls. On the pod, the glowing pulse grew brighter, as if awakening. Marcus backed up instinctively. Wait, you're waking it up? Why? Elijah didn't look at him. If they think it's active, they'll rush in fast, trying to secure it before it goes live. That's when we trigger the failsafe. It's the only way to make sure they all come down here before we disappear. Marcus felt his breath quicken. And if it actually activates before then? Elijah's voice lowered. Then we'll have a much bigger problem than a dozen operatives. The lights overhead flickered as the pod's glow intensified, filling the chamber with a soft, pulsing hum. Somewhere above, alarms began to sound a distant, echoing wail that grew louder with every second. Elijah straightened, glancing toward the blast door. They're coming. We don't have much time. Marcus's voice shook. Tell me there's a way this doesn't end with us dead. Elijah's eyes stayed on the glowing pod, his expression as calm as ever. There is, but it requires one thing, Marcus. Marcus swallowed hard. What? Elijah finally turned to face him. That you trust me. Even when everything about what I'm about to do tells you not to. The alarms above grew louder, boots thundering through the corridor beyond the blast door. The pod's pulse quickened, almost like a heartbeat, and Marcus realized, whatever Elijah was planning, there was no stopping it now. The alarms wailed louder as the heavy blast door shook from the force of boots slamming against it. The operatives were seconds away from breaching. The pod at the center of the chamber glowed brighter, the hum deepening into a low, vibrating pulse that made the floor tremble. Marcus stood near the edge of the room, gripping the cold metal railing, his breath shallow. Every instinct told him to run, to find any exit, but the only person who knew a way out was Elijah, and Elijah wasn't moving toward the door. He was moving toward the pod. Marcus's voice cracked as he whispered, "What are you doing?" "They'll be through that door any second." Elijah's eyes stayed on the glowing pod. "We need them to all come down here. If even one stays behind, the plan fails." Marcus felt his chest tighten. The plan. You're using this thing to lure them? Elijah didn't answer. He placed his hand on a console, entering a final sequence of commands. The pod's glow surged, its panels sliding apart to reveal a dark, hollow core. Inside, faint streams of blue light swirled like liquid, casting eerie patterns across the chamber walls. Marcus took a step back. "What is that?" "Some kind of weapon," Elijah glanced at him briefly. "Not exactly. It's a neural control system. It can shut down entire networks or people in seconds. It was built to end wars before they started." Marcus's eyes widened. "And you're just turning it on. Isn't that dangerous?" Elijah's tone stayed calm. "It was always dangerous. That's why I buried it. But tonight, it's the only thing that can make sure none of them walk out alive." The blast door finally gave way with a thunderous crash. A dozen operatives stormed into the chamber, weapons raised, scanners glowing. Their leader's modulated voice barked a single order: "Secure the pod. Take the target alive if possible. Kill the other." Marcus froze, every muscle in his body. Locking the barrels of 2 rifles swung toward him instantly. He raised his hands slowly, his voice trembling. "Wait, I'm not." Before he could finish, Elijah stepped between Marcus and the operatives. In one swift motion, he held up a small device, a slim black control stick with a glowing blue trigger. The operatives stopped in unison. Every scanner in the room lit up red, alarms chirping. Pod's hum deepened, its swirling lights flashing. In rhythm with the glow of Elijah's device, the leader raised his weapon. "Elijah Brooks, deactivate the system. Now, or everyone in this room dies." Elijah's expression didn't change. "That's the idea. The leader stiffened, his voice colder now. You won't escape. There is no safe exit for you, Elijah. Finally allowed the faintest smirk to cross his face. There is for me, not for you. He tapped the trigger twice. The pod's glow flared, filling the chamber with blinding blue light. The hum became a high-pitched tone that pierced the air. Marcus dropped to his knees, clutching his ears, while the operatives staggered, their gear sparking as systems shorted. Out, their weapons went dead, scanners powered down. One by one, they fell to the ground, not dead but paralyzed, their bodies twitching as the neural system seized control of their nervous signals. Marcus looked up in shock. You just knocked them all out? Just like that? Elijah's voice was calm, but his grip on the device tightened. They're not out, they're on a timer. When this shuts down, they'll wake up, and when they do, they'll come for us harder than before. We have 5 minutes. Elijah moved quickly to another console near the chamber wall, entering another sequence of codes. The floor beneath the pod began to shift, a circular hatch opening to reveal a deep shaft with another platform below. From within, a faint hum grew louder, the sound of something old powering up. Marcus stumbled closer. What is that? Another level. Elijah nodded. The transit line connects to tunnels outside the city. It was built for extraction. In case this site was ever compromised. Marcus stared at him. So we can escape? Just like that? Elijah's gaze stayed on the console. Not just yet. If we leave now, they'll track us. We need to make sure this place and everything in it is gone before they recover. Marcus's voice cracked. Gone? You mean to blow it up? Elijah finally turned to him, his eyes steady. Not an explosion, a collapse. When we trigger. The failsafe, every tunnel and chamber above us seals. No one gets out. The pod stays buried forever. And so do they. Marcus felt a chill run down his spine. And if we're not fast enough, Elijah's fingers hovered over the final command on the console, then we stay buried with them. The pod's light flickered as Elijah finished. The sequence. Deep rumble shook the chamber, the first sign that the failsafe had been activated. Above them, distant booms echoed like thunder as heavy blast doors began sealing. Dust drifted from the ceiling, the whole structure groaning. Under its own weight, Elijah grabbed Marcus by the arm, pulling him toward the open shaft. Move now. Marcus stumbled onto the lower platform, gripping the railing as it began to descend. Above, the paralyzed operatives remained sprawled across the floor, the pod still glowing faintly beside them. The sight sent a shiver through Marcus as the platform lowered into darkness. Marcus glanced at Elijah. You could have killed them, why didn't you? Elijah's eyes stayed on the glowing walls sliding past them, 'cause killing them is easy, making them live with. Failure? That's harder. And it sends a message. Marcus frowned. A message to who? Who are these people really working for? Elijah's jaw tightened. The same people I used to work for? The same people who built all this? And when they realize, they lost me in the pod. They'll come looking again. Marcus's voice dropped to a whisper. And when they do, Elijah finally looked at him, his calm gaze carrying a shadow of something colder. And we make sure they never find us. The platform sank deeper, the rumble of collapsing tunnels echoing above them. The last thing Marcus saw as the upper chamber disappeared from view was the pod's light flickering out, swallowed by the falling debris. For a long moment, there was only darkness and the hum of the transit line. Then ahead, faint lights flickered to life, revealing a sleek, high-speed transport pod waiting at the end of the tunnel. Elijah stepped toward it, his movements steady as ever. Marcus hesitated before following. His voice was quiet, unsure. Where? Where do we go now? Elijah glanced back at him, his expression unreadable. Somewhere they'll never think to look, and if they do, he paused, his hand resting on the transport pod's control panel. They'll wish they hadn't. The doors slid open. Elijah stepped inside without another word. Marcus followed, the doors closing behind them with a soft hiss as the transport shot forward into the darkness. Leaving the collapsing site behind, Marcus realized one thing. He didn't know who Elijah really was. He didn't know where they were going. and he didn't know if he would ever truly be safe again. But he knew this. The quiet janitor he once thought was nobody was the most dangerous man he had ever met.